channel. That'd be good.
All right. Killer. Hey, how's it going, everybody? So we're doing this pre-recorded today to make sure everything goes nice and smooth. I want to introduce all of you to my good friend Tala Linden from Down Under. She's Australian, and we know each other in network at the Temple of the White Dragon, and so we're all various people working on our basically our incarnation gifts and being focused through proper knowledge and wisdom to be developed, and we're largely in the same we're largely in the same ballpark under these guidances, knowing the higher force and things like that. And so we're encouraging each other because of everything that we have to offer towards this silly thing they call the greater good. But at any rate, Tala, how are you doing? Introduce yourself to the people of my channel.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen. I'm doing good. Yeah, it's morning here, so I'm just gradually waking up. But yeah, we both have aligned intentions in terms of path work. A lot of the work we do is about, well, it's self-discipline, self-actualization. It's a process, shadow work, all of those type of things I think is integral for the development and the journey of the soul, and then how that contributes, like you said, to a greater good, because the more people actually doing that, the more ripples we create in the fabric of this reality. Yeah, so I think we've all got that aligned kind of thing. It's not about spiritual bypassing and passing it off to some organization or group or higher power in a sense, like a religion or a cult or something like that. It's more about knowing yourself, having that inner introspection, doing your best to do the work in terms of things that can be challenging. Like when you're actually improving yourself, you've got to really put yourself up to the challenge and push through sometimes. It's like if you're a runner or a swimmer or doing weights or something, there's going to be times where you just feel absolutely exhausted and you don't want to go anymore. But it's that process of actually pushing through and breaking that barrier. And then each time we do that, we become stronger and more able to hold the energy of this reality in a sense, in terms
Yeah.
of awareness. So it's a physical thing. It's also an emotional thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's multi-level, and we're all working on it on different levels. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm about. But in terms of my own personal journey, I guess you could say I work with healing modalities. Kinesiology has been a huge thing for me. I practice that. Not many people really understand what kinesiology is, but it's a really incredible modality for tapping into the body and understanding the body as this intelligent thing, that we can actually talk to it, get information, but also it's like a circuit with energy. We can bring energy in or we can clear energy with that process. And
Hmm.
that's also connected to Chinese medicine, qi, all this type of thing. Yeah, I also teach yoga, which I find really beneficial. It's been my own medicine in a sense, for a very long time. And I do transpersonal art therapy. So I work with clients with that as well. And I'm an artist. So I'm just amalgamating things at the moment. Yeah.
Gotcha. What was it? Trans something art therapy?
Yeah, transpersonal. It needs to go beyond and across. So that was just the course I did basically. But it was an incredible course when I studied it, because it was very much focused on the holistic, more shamanic paradigm of psychology, opposed to the mainstream medical model. We still studied all of that, of course, but it was
Yeah.
looking at rituals, symbols, dreams, mythology, all these different um,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So,
topics, holotropic breath work, like drumming journeys. And yeah, it was very open to exploring all different things for a person to heal, because
carrying
in
on
terms
in,
of psychology, it's very limiting.
yeah, like kind of carrying on in the Jungian approach
Yes, it was
to
very Jungian based, very
process.
much so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
other people like Stanislav Grof and Michael Harner and Ken Wilber and people like that, that were the early holistic psychologists in a sense, that were covering, yeah, more humanistic kind of stuff. um, yeah, opposed to behavioralism and yeah, some of the other forms of psychology that are very, yeah, they can be a bit shallow and yeah, very mechanistic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, they certainly can, right? Depending on how people, fall into, because there's people that are gonna work this hard, this kinds of things hard as a career path, especially um with this kind of these kinds of sciences on the emergence for those that are wise enough to be getting for trying uh, these different kinds of treatments and therapies that are not within uh, the paradigm of the last 100 or so odd years that we've understood of the industrial institutions of medicine and treatment, right?
Exactly.
And
Because
so
psychoanalysis, like it started off as a study of the soul in the days of Jung and Freud and all these guys, but it got hijacked in a sense and turned into a labeling system. You know, we've got the DCSM and it's just labeling people. And the main thing with mental illness is people are usually feeling lost and they're feeling lack of identity and a disturbance and an imbalance. So if
yeah,
you just slap label on them, then they've got some kind of identity to associate
yeah,
with that isn't necessarily very positive. Of
no,
course, it can help people in some ways, but within the paradigm I work in, we're taught that's a state of consciousness. It's not who you are. And you can move through states of consciousness. As a human being, we have that ability to have state change and change our state through playing music, through dancing, through yoga, through meditation, through Qigong, whatever. We've got these different tools that we can resonate with to change our state of consciousness and shift out of anxiety or depression
right,
or whatever these states are that they label you as, which
yeah,
is incorrect, in my opinion. I don't think anyone's one thing.
right,
We're multidimensional.
yeah. They're trying
Yeah.
to they're trying to broad the brush with the term neurodivergent. This is a new
Yes.
vernacular going on, which it comes about. This is coming about what makes sense, obviously, because the entire psychological world is wrapped into a very particular scientific world that is for the transhuman agenda, right? And so
Right.
for an average person, they get this sense of, oh, okay, neurodivergent, right? And that makes them feel kind of special, right? So there's a lot of people that felt displaced, not comprehending, conceptually what it is. Say they had the taboo urges that we're all seeing in this odd public display that's being pushed on the inversions, right? With like the
Right.
sexuality, the gender agenda, things like that, right? So like, when somebody like figures out that like you're gay, now your gay becomes your identity. You're proud of this thing, when your sexuality is just a small facet of your character, but it
Yeah.
swallows who that person is whole under certain toxic situations, and there's no balance. There's no balance there, and then it becomes the weird thing that they gaslit you about in the first place. And this is just talking about the difference between the mindset of where we are coming from versus the mindset of where the world is coming from, right? And so like the neurodivergent, like simulation theory is out there and things like that, and everything is getting into something that's quantifiable, right? They're trying to quantify a way the human mind works, so by making it sound like a technical term, it gives us a technical vernacular to work with the psychology of the human body, and that gives them a path work for fear, domination, and control in their agenda.
Exactly. And people identify with the egregore of that stereotype instead of their actual true nature and consciousness, which is way more complex and really can't be defined in the way that they wish to define it. I think that's why they're attempting to associate people with these kind of these stereotypes, because then they can say, oh, you're just this, instead of you exploring the complexity of your soul and the fact that we're probably all neurodivergent to a point. The more we explore our inner journey of who we are, we're all unique beings, you know. None of us can be defined by, like you said, sexuality or political views, and to do that, we're actually limiting ourselves, because life is a lot more like complex and fluid than that, you know, and people change. You know, we don't want to be stuck in a box, because then we're not going to grow and expand. You know, what one person thinks is truth one day can shift and change depending on experiences and new knowledge that a person can find.
Yeah. Because there's the inherent, there's going to be that inherent kind of alienation, right? You know, because like it's going to make you, like, it's going to other you by putting you into this psychological mindset of the neurodivergent. And then while it's perfectly fine that you've got this unique quality that is part of what makes you interesting, right? It's just like, I am sure that somebody could easily diagnose me or you as, quote, neurodivergent. But the difference between us and a neurodivergent is that we integrated it all without drugs.
Exactly. Yeah, the drugs
I didn't need Prozac for 15 years and a therapy for an hour a week to like figure out how to love myself and be well adjusted without compromising a goddamn thing about how weird I am.
Exactly. Yeah, it's actually accepting it and stepping into it and celebrating that uniqueness and weirdness, because that's wonderful. The world needs more of that. It's boring if everybody's what they call neurotypical, which whatever the hell that is, you know.
Right. Although that does sound like a sick diss. You fucking neurotypical. Right? Like, at least it rolls off the tongue nice, right?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, going back to, these pharmakeia, these drugs, there's times someone might be in a psychotic episode and they may need some assistance. But overall, there's been more alternative studies done with, say, psychosis and the fine line between that and a spiritual awakening, and also things like schizophrenia and stuff like that. And yeah, there was a guy called John Weir Perry, an alternative psychotherapist, who took a whole heap of men out into the forest for 40 days and 40 nights. And he gave them, fresh, like organic, just like whole food diet, no chemicals, no alcohol, drugs, just clean water, a fire every night to sit around, hiking, just a really wholesome camping experience for 40 days and 40 nights. And every single one of those people's symptoms went away after that 40 days and 40 nights of being back in balance with nature, purifying their body from all the contaminants in us modern society. We're exposed to so many things. And a lot of these behavioral issues and mental health problems are actually linked to allergies and problems with certain toxins that we're being exposed to in our environment, and gut health problems, because, as we know, serotonin is produced in the gut. You've got the gut-brain connection, HPA axis, all of that stuff, and how that's all interrelated. So if a person grows up eating heaps of additives, processed food, had heaps of, injections, heaps of pharmaceutical drugs, their body's not well. So of course they're going to feel depressed or have anxiety or issues. They've got heavy metal overload, parasites, all these things that can create disturbance.
Classic documentary to watch once in your life is Super Size Me, right?
Yeah, I saw that years ago. Yeah,
exactly. Super Size Me is just a great basic, don't need to throw a conspiracy theory example of what the hell's going on. The guy goes, he does his thing, like he punishes his body for you for this film by going straight to a 3-meal-a-day supersized McDonald's diet for like a couple of weeks or months or something.
Yeah.
And like he put on so many like long, like, keep this up long term and you've fucked yourself by the end of the documentary, right? He was very happy to be completely done with all of that at the end of it, right? Because imagine if you're doing that because you're wanting to put yourself into the compulsion of Man, I
Mhm.
love McDonald's. I just love, it's just like I gotta go get myself a McDonald's every day, at least, one per. Like, there's people that have had that mindset, for all those years, and it's uh, it's this attachment to the toxicity of that brand because, like maybe there's some superficial conversation with some guy you barely like, so you're not lonely, and it's just like for some strange reason you have an asinine conversation about McDonald's, and this is why you love McDonald's so much, right? It can be as
I
sad
went there as a kid and
on
got a Happy
on
Meal or
some,
something.
yeah, on some
Yeah.
weird deep psychological, you're not Carl Jung, don't tell me that fucking level, right? you know
And it's very addictive, these foods, like if you don't eat them and you eat them,
right.
they actually burn your mouth and make you want to vomit. But if you eat them all the time, you build up a tolerance, just like someone that takes heroin builds up a tolerance. Or if you drink a shitload of coffee all the time, you build up a tolerance. But it doesn't necessarily do you any good. It's yeah, just a fact that people are adjusted to that toxic society because that's what we're bombarded with, sadly, in most of the Western countries, anyhow. Most of the food, like if you go into a supermarket, you go through all the aisles, you're only going to find like 5%, if you're lucky, of food that is actually classed as healthy, that's actually edible, and doesn't have, seed oils, GMOs, massive
Yeah,
amounts of sugar, all
yeah,
these things. And
yeah. When I
yeah,
when I go to the grocery store, 99% of the time, I'm grabbing ingredients for something that isn't going to waste all of my time to cook at home, right?
yeah,
And there's a handful of frozen foods out there that have acceptable ingredients, and I usually just grab ones that have conventional oven instructions, and I'll sit there and I'll be like, damn right, I'm gonna wait 45 minutes. I'm not gonna grow an eye over my ear or whatever this mutation is going to be that people joke about, you know?
yeah. It's about balance too, like we can enjoy some things, but I think, yeah, it's just having some good stable foundations and self-care habits and only you or me as individuals have that responsibility. Because people look to the medical system, they're like, oh, doctor, help me, I'm sick. And it's like, yeah, that has a place as well. If you need, something taken out, you've got appendix, it's about to burst. Yeah, an
Yeah,
operation can be great. But in terms of actually holistic healing, you have to do it yourself. And it takes hard work. It takes study. It takes,
yeah,
yeah, responsibility. And it's a process. You can't just change everything all at once either. You've got to
no,
slowly introduce things to rebalance the body. I highly suggest like adaptogens, to help relieve stress, because a lot of people are relying on things like you said, McDonald's or coffee or whatever, because of stress, because we're in a very high paced society. There's a lot of pressure. The cost of living is very high. There's all these things that make that convenience of going and getting fast food or having another coffee or whatever it is, more appealing. So if we can regulate the body and regulate our nervous system through some of the practices we were mentioning before, bioenergetic work and stuff, but yeah, also taking, yeah, herbal adaptogens, just starting to like balance the body, also like heal the gut through probiotics, parasite cleansers, bit by bit. But yeah, takes that research and time. Yeah. And you have to really want to heal.
right,
That's the
right.
thing. Yeah.
Right, yeah, like I tell people, because it's so simple, it's one of my litmus tests of what kind of person you really think you want to have time to be. Pranic breathing. It's just
Mm.
like if you can't freaking dedicate a small portion of your day to a pranic breathing meditation, like just a couple of minutes, just to have a certain like oxygen carbon dioxide circulation detox thing, doing something that you're doing already, which is just breathing, right? And just, can you breathe properly? Because if I believe, if you don't know, if you can't follow an instruction of breathing properly for one session, how are you gonna do anything with yoga, with qigong, with any exercise, running, right? For anything that's gonna be just for what your body needs, and you know, it's like you got to be in the body and in the spirit at the
And
same
the diaphragm.
time with this work, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just like
Right.
if you've ever seen some of these not so healthy looking maguses on the internet, um, there's a reason why their magic doesn't seem so impressive, right?
Mm.
It's because they're not impressed with themselves.
Yeah, the breath is so important. You know, the more we oxygenate the blood and the cells and everything, the more chi or prana, life force energy comes into the body. And the diaphragm itself is a muscle. So it's like any muscle. If you go to the gym and work out, you're building up a muscle memory, you're building up strength. And then you begin to naturally breathe deeper into the diaphragm, because most people are really breathing from up here, you know. So we're wanting to learn to come right down deep into the lungs and expand the belly on the inhale, fill up the lungs. And the more you do that, you slow down, deepen, lengthen the breath, you start to just feel more calm, the mind stills, the focus gets better, you know, which are all qualities that we all need in this modern society with all the technology and stuff that is creating like symptomatic ADHD with everyone because of the flicking of the screen and the, you know, the fast pacedness of it all. So yeah, it's very important, very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you can be like kind of an overkill person, because you were talking about earlier, like getting that will to to motivate and to push harder to get the result, right? Right? Like
Right.
some people they can burn themselves out before they're even going, right?
Exactly.
And so the burnout person has the opposite problem where it's like the meme about like I need to remember to have a rest day, right? That can be
Mm-hmm.
me, right? I can sit there and just get lost in the, well, I haven't worked my arms in 3 days, so yeah, I'm gonna do arms today. When the truth is, I also just haven't taken a break in 2 weeks, and it's just like, dude, take a day off. Your whole body needs a reset. It's like, no, I'm fine. No, you need a break, right? And you have to have a wrestling match in your head while you're still, working on your disciplines.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And yeah, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. That's why, yeah, something like breath work is great, even if it is only for a few minutes, because it can just help bring you back to the present moment, back to center, and really calm and still everything. Just settle the nervous system a little bit and regenerate. But the thing about pranayama in yoga philosophy is, in terms of the eight limb philosophy, Patanjali's yoga philosophy, you actually need to do yoga asana as well to strengthen the body to do breath work pranayama, because a lot of it is associated with the posture of the body. You know, you want to build up all the muscles in the back and the core and everything like that. Get these rotator cuffs of the shoulders coming back to open up the diaphragm. So yeah, like gym work, asana, all of that is really integral too, to have that stability to sit up and actually do breath work in a comfortable way that you're going to get benefits from in terms of the spine, the jed or the kundalini energy or whatever you want to call it, opening up the nadis, Sushumna nadis, which is that main nadis that runs through the center of the body, Ida and Pingala, which are the other two in yogic philosophy. They're like the three main energy channels, and then there's like 74,000 plus other channels running through the body. So we're kind of wanting to unblock all of that and open up the energy flow, because we are just energy.
74,000. As somebody
Something
counted.
like that, 84 or 74. It's something like that in terms of nadis, which is very akin to the meridians in acupuncture as well. Although there's not as many meridians in Chinese philosophy. I think there's 24 or something. And then there's the 8 extraordinary channels. But
Well, I thought there were
yeah,
108 meridians in the Chinese system.
there may be. I'm only aware of the
Yeah,
main organ ones, the
like
central,
like
the governing
yeah, because like
element organs.
my comprehension of the reason why you do 108 mantra on the Nala beads is because of
Mm-hmm.
108 meridians, and every time you speak the mantra and count the bead, that's one meridian activated out of the 108. So
Yeah,
you've integrated that Om Namah Shivaya or whatever your mantra is into the whole of your energy field.
it's a very powerful number, 108. And once again, it adds to 9.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I was looking once at, I think it was the octaves in the 432 hertz musical scale. I'm pretty sure it was the octave points, and 108 was in there. So was 144. So was 432. They were all numbers that added to 9, which I found really interesting. Um, I'm not that adept in that. I just looked at it once and went, oh wow, that's very interesting that that mathematics is in that scale, because people are in that tuning. Sorry, because a lot of people say that 432 is just some kind of hippie thing, you know, new age fad or something like that. But there is something really interesting mathematically about that tuning opposed to 440 hertz, which is just a little yeah, side note there.
Yeah.
Going back to the 108, it was in there. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. The numerology and the inherent value of a number. There's something about it where no matter what system you're using, that if you are using the numerology within that system properly, that it like it all snaps into place anyway. Because of the nature of how numbers are helping us quantify the things, such as the frequency or the tonality, the vibrational correspondence to whatever that vibration is within our biofield, right? You know,
Yeah.
biofield tuning. I know a guy.
You know a guy who does biofield tuning, you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, I know a guy who does biofield tuning, so that principle's all kind of baked in the cake, and so the
Yeah.
432 is very quintessential. I know that the 440, because I play guitar, right?
Yeah.
Like, um, and because I like to play like heavy metal, extreme metal, like
Hmm.
440 works with what 440 is designed to do, which is to be an
Gotcha.
agitator, right? To put it in that agitation space, right? Because
Yes. The high. Yeah.
if I do some of my super aggressive riffing on a 432, that slight that slight flattening of the note um has this entire um softening across the
That's
whole
everything.
song once it's all set to that to that frequency level, right? To make everything
Yeah.
in pitch to it. Um, and
It's
it's a
yeah.
subtlety where it's not as you're playing it as aggressive. Everything's the same, but the tonality of itself
Due to
hits
the pitch.
it hits
Yeah.
under the skin, and it may not necessarily have the same effect you need when you just really want to have the sound that goes "Grrr," right. But there's you can definitely feel that it's better on your nerves. You
Yeah,
definitely
it's a softer thing. Yeah, I play a little bit of acoustic guitar too, so I notice that I actually prefer to tune my little acoustic Taylor into 432 because I more finger pick and just play soft stuff, so it just feels nicer doing that, or more pleasant, say that word.
yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, with metal I could see how you kind of want that edge and that jarringness to it in a sense. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So there is something quite jarring about 440, and I know it came in after World War II. They
Yeah.
set that as the collective kind of tuning pitch for the world. So yeah, maybe it just adds to the nervous system anxiety that we're bombarded with in all different directions. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, and I believe it is one of the holdover decisions. Like you see, like before the war started, like and before everybody knew what was up with me and Mr. Mustache, like there were a lot of people that were open to the things that were coming out of Germany during the Nazi period. Right, a lot of people that were that were like that, and I think I read somewhere that the people involved with making the orchestra standard were originated all their ideas from a guy involved with the Reich, right? So and I remember all the correlations in an article. This is off the cuff. I'm not like, don't quote me on it, but
Uh-huh.
I'm just throwing it out there as knowing that that's in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like Project Paperclip, that's a lot of origins coming
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the
and
Third Reich
and it's
going to
it's
America.
not just about rockets. It's not just
Yeah,
about
not just about rockets. Yeah, exactly. It's multi-layered. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Never
yeah,
really stopped, I think. Yeah, yeah. And the inversion of sacred symbols. because, you know, there's this whole idea that certain symbols are evil because certain people have used them over time and associated something
Right.
negative with them. Like the swastika, for example, which is
Yeah.
actually a
Yeah.
sacred Hindu symbol that goes back thousands of years and didn't have any evil association prior to Hitler. So,
Yeah.
and folio as a rune, you know, with the SS
Mhm.
taking folio. That's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, like I think also, to be fair, I think that I've really been seeing with this, like, I don't necessarily feel the biggest compulsion. I think there's now an understanding, because
Mhm.
the swastika is, which is not even a rune, although it is theoretically a bind rune of two Uwaz's crossing. Um,
Yeah.
that design, all of that kind of falls under. I forget the German's name, and he was part, you know, he's part of the Nazi, like he was like, he became a Nazi, and he was coming out of the occultist, like the folkish movement, and he's the one that
The civil
created
society and all
the
that. Yeah.
stylization of the runes that would be the official rune stylization for Nazi occultism. Right, that would
Yeah.
become the SS uniform. So Saulo, the Thala with the wings on the bottom, that's all like him, right? So a lot of people do seem to be that intelligent, because I think that we did have this grace period before the political parlance of the psyop had to come about. That there's plenty of people out there that are well representing the runes, and you know, by and large, I don't see it. I think there's a lot of people that fall into traps, make bad arguments, or just ignorantly are working with those particular kinds of runes, you know, for whatever reason, and they'll get burned. Not
Yeah.
that I think that they necessarily should, unless the details warrant them being burned. But
Yeah. It's all about the
I just
intention
want to,
of
yeah,
put
because I
into
just
it.
wanted to say that although that ignorance exists, I've put a lot of that to the test. I mean, my channel heavily uses it, and I'll just call it the Philfot, because I'm of you know, Carpathian stock, and I'm not trying to make my tradition Vedic either. We have it. It's called the Philfot. You know, that's the European word for the swastika, and that's the basis I use for two of the symbols that I use consistently on my channel, and I've never been warned about it once. So I think people know the difference, which is good.
Yeah. So
Progress.
reclaiming these, yeah,
Progress.
reclaim them, you know, because a lot of this dark stuff is about mocking the divine
Yeah.
aspects, you know. That's why they've taken them, and they want that negative association due to their intent. So we've got to reclaim it and flip it back around, really. Put that
Yes.
positive magic back out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
will consistently chase us away from our words, right? And then all of a sudden we can't freaking have a conversation because that word's been perverted to fit an insult in their world when it is a place of dignity in ours. And you don't understand that power until you've grown that command of your sword or your words.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. Another way to censor people in a sense. Mm.
Exactly. You know, this is part of your psychic integrity, your glamour, your charisma, which is all part of how you charge your magic, right? And you also are in a certain level of practice of magic and the metaphysics, which is informing what you're doing here. And so, tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the way more metaphysical end. You know, because especially because I've, you know, you've had some really great conversations with my friend Jungle and Maria West in the past, and you've got a couple of neat things on your YouTube channel that you talk about from a while back. So yeah, let us know a little bit more about that side of your work.
Yeah, that's come very, I guess you could say, naturally to me. It hasn't been something that I've made a huge effort to get into. It's just been my reality. Of course, I've always had a connection with astrology, the runes, tarot, all these types of systems of gnosis. My entire life, I've been studying and looking at. So, yeah, understanding those archetypes and those symbols has been really important to me. But in terms of work with magic, it's more just come to me in a sense, because I'm quite open. I've just had a lot of intuitive experiences, a lot of visionary experiences, just things unfolding, basically, synchronicities, just being in that frequency, basically, and of having confirmations in all sorts of ways. You mentioned about that dragon or dragon dreams, that video I made. Yeah, that was a huge confirmation for me. Yeah, after doing some work with Sethicus Boza, and he was talking about the prophecy of the white dragon. And I had this dream not long after he told me about that, where I was in this mystical like kingdom, you know, like a castle, Lord of the Rings kind of style. And there was a whole wisdom council there. And we were all having a meeting because we had these two eggs. And one of the eggs looked like it was glowing, it was golden, white, silvery, beautiful egg. And it was on a podium or a pillar thing. And then there was another one that was kind of in a clasp kind of podium thing, and it was shadow. It was just all darkness, and it kind of was like the abyss, this egg. And we were discussing, what do we do with these two eggs? And all of a sudden, the shadow one hatched, and it opened up. And as it opened up, out came this dragon, and he was just like Shadow, the abyss. He was like Nigoga from the Norse mythos, you know, and he comes out, as he comes out, he grows. He gets bigger and bigger, and he begins to devour the sky around us. And we all look at each other and go, we got to get out of here. So we grabbed the golden white egg and we went out of that dimension as he began to devour it all. And I woke up from that dream. I was like, holy moly. And then maybe 12 months later, I had another dream where I saw the white dragon, and he'd hatched and he was fully grown, and he was more like a European style dragon. But in that same dream, I also saw two more Oriental style dragons, a yellow and a green one that were intertwined over a bridge. And then I met the white dragon, and he just gave off this beautiful energy. It was just so pure and so clear and just profound. It left me with this energy for days afterwards, after the dream. I almost felt like I got some kind of healing from it. It was really, really amazing. And he telepathically in the dream told me, I'm with you all now. I'm ready. You know, the time's come. So yeah, that was a beautiful progression to have those two different dreams, like a year apart, kind of confirming that process. And in between that, I also had another dream with the Shadow Dragon, where he was there in this other kind of My Lab style dream with all these super soldiers, and he was controlling my labs in a sense. It was quite weird. And anybody that broke out of those programs, he was trying to devour in that particular dream. So yeah, it was an interesting paradox between the good and the evil and all of that going on.
Interesting. Yeah. I had a dream when I was very, very young, where I think I was in a car or something like that, and it was like driving in like kind of like a surrealist version of like near where I live, like in my town or whatever, and looking over like a you know, like the hillside up in the air. It was like this it was like waiting to hatch. It was like a translucent, like transparent, like dragon egg with like an embryonic, like fetal position dragon kind of like developing in it, waiting to hatch. And it was dark. It was very like very like Halloween night kind of vibe in this dream. And like the dream itself wasn't a nightmare, but it was the tone of a nightmare. I've always had an odd, like, I've always kind of like, I've always had a strong fight or flight in my nightmares, right? It's like one thing that definitely does not happen in my dreams is that I do not stand there and take it unless the force in the dream has you know, paralyzed me in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, which that comes into play with other dreams, got nothing to do with dragons. Then way later on down the line, I had a neat little dream in a I was in a mansion. I think I might have been with a family or something like that, and this was kind of like a magic mansion. And then there were all these different doors in the main room, and at least one of these doors that I opened up was like like this little pocket dimension where there was this gigantic like white dragon that was friendly or something, and so like this dragon was something to do with us and the mansion or whatever, because it was kind of our mansion. And then this last one that I recall, I was in I was in this the dark woods, like some enchanted forest situation, in this gazebo that's been lit up by like some sort of luminescence. Can't tell if it's electrical or some sort of candle. And all these people are there having a party, and everybody, including myself, has a dragon about the same size as my iguana Locke that is always around them, and they're having this it's some sort of social function in this illuminated gazebo within a pitch black woods. And then the strange thing that happens there is that my attention gets turned to outside of the gazebo, off into the very, very dark. And before anything showed up, I could feel it turning into a nightmare. I didn't know what was going on. I knew something was coming. I looked at everybody and I said, something don't feel right. I think we should go. And then I woke myself up by saying, I ain't staying here. This feels like this is going nightmare. And I like gave myself an Inception style kick by coming into my body within its paralysis and then unhinging my jaw to scream.
Yeah.
And then I woke myself. Yeah.
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 Where you're just kind of frozen and
Yeah.
you can't
And I
walk
wasn't
and
in
you can't
panic.
scream.
Like I wasn't in panic. I was just like, I'm waking myself up. I was like, oh, okay, I'm in sleep paralysis, and I know what to do, because I have a different. People freak out about sleep paralysis. They have no idea how natural it is when you're in REM sleep. You're
Yeah,
supposed,
I've had it a few times. Yeah,
supposed to be in sleep
especially when I was
paralysis.
younger. Yeah.
Keeps you.
Although one time I had it, I was I was quite young at the time. I might have been like 18 or something, and I was in sleep paralysis, and I woke up. I was kind of lucid, half awake, like hypnagogic state, and there was this being sitting on my chest that wasn't very pleasant. It was kind of like an incubus kind of thing. It looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. He had the pointy ears, the bald big head, and the pointy teeth. Wasn't a very uh, good being. It was pretty creepy actually, and I had to do a whole heap of protection stuff afterwards to really like get my field fortified from
Yeah.
something like that.
Sometimes we get those visitors. They're feeding on our psychic energy and our sleep, and that's why if you have certain nightmares that you don't like get out of early enough, you wake up feeling completely like you didn't sleep at all.
That's right.
Like your body will be fine, but your head will have not felt like it slept. That's when one of them have come, and they kind of feed the nightmare into you, and and then suck up then suck up all of your reaction, all of your emotional reaction to or whatever, with no benefit to you at all, right? It's just coming in and tapping you for your problem for a price of a good night's sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And it's energy harvesting. Yeah. That's why it's so important to learn how to protect your energy. It's quite an art form in itself, especially now, because I feel like the veil is so thin between the lower astral and the other realms and here now. I think over the last few decades it's just become thinner and thinner. Like things are just coming through now. That was another few visions I had, was about this rift being torn open, in terms of this abyss energy that's been coming through, seeping into this reality. And in many ways, I think it's been more opened up. I was shown CERN was a major way that they'd created that dark portal or wormhole, but also like the needlecraft stuff, all of that. It's even more important now than ever to work with our energy field, build up our like auric fields, our light bodies, to be able to defend in a sense from that stuff and be more autonomous in our energy. And that's a process, but the more you become aware of it, the more you become aware when it's being invaded or when it's not, in a sense.
People are
and
calling
even if it's
for I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, yeah. I was just going to say, even if your own energy is solid, then you can actually get challenged by those around you sometimes as well. If they've got a little bit of an energetic issue going on, that can be projected through other people too. That type of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is this is the conflict of worlds, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I've read, I've read another Nazi, Martin Heidegger, right? Being in Time, by Heidegger, right? And so we have our world, and then we have the existential world, and the existential world may not agree with our world, and we may be forced to surrender to it. We're used to this when our childlike ideas of the world from how we perceive reality before adulthood, and then, the ways of adulthood kind of beat you over the head and you realize that certain things don't work the way that you want them to, right? Like I suffered with many of layers of this delusion, with my life holding me down, and now I'm beating a lot of bad habits out of myself in a way that I need to. But the point is that I believe the psychic integrity of the world is falling apart, and because as we went through the truther movement, the conspiracy theorists pushing what they're pushing, most of them were pushing on a nihilist angle because they were just like, this is the truth about how bad it is, right? And this is how much that you can't have what you really want, and all of it's within the negative. It's all about, well, this history is a lie, this science is a lie, this law is a lie, this money over here is a lie, this whole business over there is a lie, this whole branch of government is a lie, right? And you're like, you're left with literally nothing. So you're just like, maybe the space aliens will come here and become a huge interesting problem, because I think if I had the problem of space aliens, then it'll give me an excuse to not care about the problems of the world, right? And so people are inviting the weirdness in, while they're also setting the conditions with CERN and things like that. And we're here to fix those problems.
Yeah, and that whole idea that we're on a prison planet and we're all slaves, that Gnostic or biblical kind of idea.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's very defeating. And then the savior programming coming in, like, will the aliens rescue us, or the beings from the fifth dimension, or whatever. There's this idea of once again passing the responsibility to something external.
It's waiting for the apocalypse. It's waiting for this big paradigm shift. You're just like, it'll just be like, all my hopes and dreams will come with the destroyer, right? This is the idea.
Kind of and a lot of that I think goes back to, like, Tazarian talks about, like, cataclysmic trauma that we've had from the past, like pre-cataclysms that we've experienced in the human memory, and we've still got that within our unconscious. So there's that collective trauma is still there. Doesn't necessarily mean something won't happen. We're on a knife edge. Many things could happen in this lifetime for us, but I feel like it's already been happening, and it's a gradual thing, and it's been happening for a few decades now, quite intensely. And it's going to intensify, and like everything's becoming more extreme, and like I said, the veil's getting thinner. There's all these elements of it. Synchronicities are increasing, the manifestation abilities, psychic abilities, all of that, if you wish, is there to hone in on now, more so than ever.
Everything kind of banks on what decisions Generation X wants to make, because the boomers are basically done. Right now, everything is older Generation X is in control. Right, and so there's a lot of terrifying prospects, knowing how the direction many of Gen X went. Right. And then there's the prospects that come from, from the others that, didn't just have a fucking debaucherous party that their parents set up for them all day. Right. Because there's the Gen Xers that grew up saying, no, no, there's something very, very wrong here. And it doesn't mean I love Jesus, but it certainly doesn't mean I need to go this crazy on Marilyn Manson, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
best
middle
way
ground.
best way I could kind of explain it from my perception of Gen X, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
almost a millennial. I'm pretty young.
you're on- yeah. And I'm an older millennial, but I think yeah, like the older millennials and the Gen X, they're the only ones left now, and a few baby boomers that are still around, but they're still here with us, but they're
Yeah,
getting more elderly. That remember the time, the analog days,
right.
pre-digital, pre all of this stuff,
Yeah,
this smart
yeah.
stuff, is yeah.
Yeah. I think that I think there are a lot of millennials that are they're not they're not like where we're at, but I think there are a lot of millennials that like they get it. They get it like hardcore. They were just silenced, voices for a long time, but now they're popping out. They got their own little podcasts and things like that, and have certain values
Amazing.
about life
Love
that
it.
that are good and on the level, so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah. Jupiter and sorry, Scorpio, Pluto, that's a good Pluto, it's in its domicile. So yeah, they can go deep. I have Pluto and Scorpio, so yeah, that generation is able to go quite intensely deep into everything in terms of our Pluto. So yeah, and I even find the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, they're very open-minded. They're actually able to really take on a lot, and explore a lot. It's just they've had a lot more to deal with growing up in terms of the technology and the
Yeah.
toxicity of the environment, all of that. But I still see a lot of potential there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
I had a lot of struggles with the duality of being a person, right? I'm a Pluto in Libra
the Libra,
generation,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it's in the second house for me. So that's
okay,
like yeah, yeah. So that gets me that I went through I went through too many extremes. That's why I brought up the extreme of overdoing workouts or whatever,
yeah,
because unfortunately, much of how I learned is directly correlated to, well, you did it properly, too fast or too slow, too hard or too soft, too this, too that, right? Too light, too heavy. This is my problem, right? And so I'm fine tuning it every time I repeat it to, pull it back a little bit here, push it in a little bit more over there, right? In just
for one
expression
equilibrium,
of whatever the heck I am doing, right? And then
yeah.
some of it some of it worked out. Well, once I've mastered it, it's like I can scare people with being impressive in just like, how'd you get all that done? And
Yeah,
it's just like it almost becomes automatic. My hands just like did the thing and did it properly.
very capable. Yeah,
Yeah,
once you find that inner equilibrium, Pluto and Libra is
yeah,
very capable. Yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah.
have
Yeah,
changed
because
the
my
world.
Aries setup just gets delight out of like doing it perfectly as fast as possible, right? And so it's being
You're an
patient.
Aries sun, right?
Right, right. It's being patient to do it slow
Yeah.
10 million times so nobody accuses me of rushing when I do it so fast that it makes your head spin, right? That's how I have to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Pace yourself a little bit too. Yeah, have
Exactly.
that moderation. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
very important. Mm. Cool, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So so in your daily life cuz I've energy fields, right? I've like you've talked a little bit about things going on with energy fields. So tell me a little bit about like what it is with you and like because I have my experience with my energy field in a day and with other places, things, and people's energy fields as I go through. Um, what have you learned in your experience with the energy fields?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I mentioned earlier, I do kinesiology, and that's a really incredible way to understand, I guess, the body's energy field. Um, yeah, are you aware much about kinesiology?
Um, I think give me the definition of kinesiology. I believe I do, just not by name right now.
Okay, so it's using muscles to test, but yeah, one of the modalities that I was trained in is called kinetogenics. So it's a very energy-based kinesiology. So, for example, you've got your arm, you can put your arm out like this. There's a muscle here, called anterior deltoid right at the front.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing, I'm going to test anterior deltoid. So like I switch the muscle on by going into the belly of the muscle and like opening it up, and that like locks the muscle. So when I press down like this, the muscle locks. If I go inwards, it switches the muscle off, the muscle will unlock. So what I've got is like a reading, a way to read the body. So then what I do, I'll ask the body questions. More so you do this on someone else, like how I'm doing it right now. But you'd be like, okay, first you want to ask if the body's hydrated. So to make sure that you're going to get a clear reading, because the body's like a biocomputer in that sense. So, you go water, hydration, dehydration. See if the body's hydrated, it will lock if I'm working from a lock to tell me, yeah, it's all good. The body's had enough water, right? If it doesn't lock and the muscle's weak, that's an indication to me that the person needs to drink a glass of water. And then I can start reading the body. So there's different muscles you can test. You don't have to use that one. There's so many different muscles. Different movements activating different muscles, right? But yeah, you can pretty much ask anything with that. But what I do, I'll test a person lying down. They'll have their arm like this. This is testing brachioradialis, which is a muscle in the arm. And I'm scanning their body while I test. And first I'm finding out, like, am I working with an organ, a gland, a chakra, a light body, whatever. I find it, I'll find the point. It'll be like, oh, okay, we're working with, the pituitary gland, for example. And then what you're doing is sending energy to that part of the body through that. Or, it might be like, oh, I'm working with the chakra right out here. We have extra chakras in this particular modality. So you've got like universal gateways, divine gateways, like cosmic gateway, like all these higher up ones and lower ones as well. So yeah, there's, I don't know, like 15 or 16 different ones that you're working with. Yeah, so you can actually find the point. The body will lock, the arm will lock when you get to the point that the energy needs to be sent. And then you can do an energy healing on that place. And yeah, you'll notice a shift. It's really interesting. Or you might go to a particular organ, you test it up and it'll be like, yeah, energy needs to be sent to the kidneys or the spleen or whatever. And then you can work with the Chinese medicine philosophy of the different colors and sounds and stuff like that go with the different organs. So like the lungs are silvery white. So you can get them to breathe in silvery white while you're sending energy to the lungs.
Gotcha.
And quite often the person will say, yeah, I've had an issue with my lungs, or I've had an issue with my kidneys or my stomach, or it's very precise. But you've also got a whole heap of lists, like scan lists of different energetic qualities, physiological qualities, emotional qualities, all different things. So you can test up and find out if you need to scan one of those lists. And I've had with clients where they've had very specific health issues that I didn't actually know the details of. And the physiological scan list has come up and it's been like, oh, something's happened with, C4 in the neck, or, a particular muscle or bone or valve in the stomach, or something like that. And they've said, oh yeah, I've had a problem with that, or I had an accident there, or I had an operation there, or whatever. Like, it's always just spot on precise. And the weirdest part about that is, on an energetic level, is I'm the one reading the list and testing their muscle. They can't see what I'm reading. And I try not to read the actual thing. I just scan it. And when the muscle locks, I stop there and I read it out and I'll say to them what's come up. And yeah, it's just so incredible how accurate it can be. It's actually mind blowing. I've had a lot of clients just go, whoa. And you can also work with like age regression, different traumas, and actually clearing that trauma out of the body, which is really cool. That, yeah, there's different processes to do that as well. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, I've done I've had that done. I've had that demonstrated on me once at a holistic medicine expo in New York a few years ago. And a big part of the test was cell phone radiation, right?
Yes.
So we all did it. We all did it. We had our hand out and then pushed down while we had our cell phone on our person and on. And then we would take our cell phones off of our person, perhaps put them on airplane mode to dull the signal or whatever, put it on our chair next to us and did it again. And then it holds itself up, right?
Yeah.
And So that was a really great demonstration of, I already knew. I knew that was making you sick. I just didn't know there was a demonstration like that.
Right.
That
Yeah,
could
yeah, you
show you
can.
precisely
And
how.
then you can get like certain like EMF gridding stuff that you can put on your phone. Like I've got a case and
Yeah,
a shielding thing and an orgonite thing and all these different things that I put on it. And
yeah,
then you get it and you test it with all that and it actually does make a difference, which is interesting. So yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
good to
yeah.
know.
I
Yeah,
keep I
yeah.
keep an organite piece on my router at all
Yeah,
times.
great.
So I
Yeah, the
believe it
orgonite's
helps.
good. Yeah, yeah, like it's powerful, like people think, oh, does that really work? These pyramids with all these crystals and bits of metal shavings and stuff. Like it's been debatable because the work of Wilhelm Reich was so deep, and he was an amazing psychologist as well. That worked with Sigmund Freud, and he kind of went on his own path. But yeah, from his theories, this whole idea of making these organites has come. And you could be skeptical because you think, how is this ornament going to work? But I remember when the smart meters came in and they kind of forced them here. They just came to people's houses and installed them against people's will. It
Mm,
was quite intense.
mm.
And yeah, like we had one put on our place, and while I wasn't home, and I put an organite pyramid on it afterwards, like a big one. And straight after that, I had the guys from the company come round to my house to see what I'd done to the smart meter. And they were checking all around it. They're looking for any earthing wires. And there's just this big pyramid on top of the smart meter, but they wouldn't think that that would do anything because it was so pretty,
Ah,
it had crystals in it and it was all shiny and lovely. They just thought it
this
was
is
some ornament.
this and that's just the beautiful thing sometimes, right?
Yeah,
It's just like they have no idea, like
they
the
couldn't
dark
comprehend that.
sorcerers are largely dark because they're ignorant, and it's a different force of evil that is compelling them because they're not evil themselves, right? So they're just looking at this superstitious thing. They don't even know they just think it's a piece of art that you decorated it on, and there's no science to it whatsoever. So they're just gonna, they're not gonna tell you anything about it. The only reason why they take it down, they're saying like, oh man, it must be like too heavy and it's affecting something, but it's probably not because it's sitting on the box, right?
They didn't even notice it. And they came back
Didn't even
twice.
notice it. That's that's
No,
that's that's
trying
great.
to figure out what I'd done to that smart meter. And I said to them, is there a problem? And they're like, oh, no, there's no problem. I said, well, why are you here? And they're like, oh, we're just checking the grid. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, is this a danger to me? And they're like, oh, no, no, no. Yeah, it was quite funny, but they were very suspicious of me. They were like, what have you done to it? So, yeah, got
Yeah,
to counteract this shit because it's everywhere. Yeah.
right. It's unfortunate you had to have it on there, right? It's like
Yeah, yeah, it's horrible.
like where's your mask? Where's your meter?
Yeah, yeah, that's just terrible. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, that they're doing this. I'm, yeah, gonna get solar and get it all taken out. It's just, yeah, terrible. But yeah, it's everywhere now, like even over the whole Rona period, like here, they were putting up all these extra new towers. They were putting up all this smart infrastructure in the cities, making Melbourne, which is the closest city to where I am, into a smart city, which, it's under the smart cities thing with the WEF and all that. They were putting up cameras everywhere and facial recognition, and yeah, it was very convenient for them to lock everyone down so they could install a whole smart grid in that time. Yeah, not
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, but it's okay. It's apparently for our safety, apparently.
Eh.
Yeah.
Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah.
It's a funky thing, but because of all these things that happen here in the West, like that, like I'm
Mm.
starting to think to myself, like if like you don't have to live there, but if you got to go anywhere in the world, just follow the rules that you're like expected to as a visitor in their country while you don't know anything about anything, and you'll end up realizing that like you could probably walk through like Nazi Germany and like nobody would treat you like poorly, and you didn't have to do anything wrong to not be treated poorly, right?
Mm.
Because it's like tyranny is not that obvious, right?
Yeah. Over.
Life had to be a certain way for a certain number of people, so that way there's a willingness to work even if you've got straight up, let's grab the whips and get those slaves pushing those stones, even if you've got that in your society, it's just like it's the mindset of the society more than anything else, right?
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
people's mindset about marijuana changed, and then marijuana was treated differently in the public. The mindset about dealing with contagion changed,
Hmm.
and that is why they gave up on forcing jabs and forcing masking, right?
Yeah.
And thus all of these non-crimes that the surveillance state was designed for like fall apart. It's just like, who's going to pay for the camera that was supposed to be charging you a ticket for being unvaccinated in public, if now the public is not interested in charging you money for being a pureblood, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Right.
that just turns it into this inept thing that just sits
Hmm.
there and doesn't serve a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And then some keen lawyer, after the emergency is passed, finds the bypass of the law, makes a video, puts it on the internet. Now everybody knows how to bypass the law. A lot of traffic
Yeah.
tickets get dismissed because they're camera tickets based on certain local laws.
Yeah. And they're not actually lawful in a sense.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right. Yeah.
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 It's just bluff.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of it's just bluff, you know, a lot of what was going on during that time, they were just bluffing people to just see how far they could push them. Because,
Well,
yeah, I never wore a mask. And if
yeah.
anyone ever asked me, I'd just say, no, I'm exempt. Sorry.
Well, there's
You know,
certainly, well, I mean, it was a bluff on the government level, but it wasn't a bluff on the corporate level. Private,
no. Yeah.
people lost all sorts of jobs left and right?
Oh, yeah, they just destroyed
And
the economy with that.
and
Yeah.
it teaches us that you a thing or two about the meaning of freedom when it's how much freedom you have on the clock, like versus off the clock, right? It's just like you're hiring a human being. You can't, you need to program your human being for the job that they're doing, and
Mhm.
that job shouldn't sit there and say, also we need you to be this exact personality type or whatever, right? They can't do that, so they just say things in the application like, you got to have a positive attitude, you got to respect what the boss is talking about, like, do you agree to all this shit, to remind you what the association, the relationship is, and everything else, and then you co-sign that, and that gives them certain leeways to fire you for insubordination, despite any rights as a worker that exist in the government. There's these certain agreements because, well, a private business is still a private business, and I still honor that concept as a private business on top of it,
Right.
right? And so there's this dance that
Mhm.
that you deal with. And that's what I'm dealing with for now, as I'm still working on my independence skills.
Yeah. That's a process. That's part of that, journey of self-actualization, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Becoming more
And it was
independent.
learning how to protect my autonomy, being in
Yeah.
an employee situation. It's just like, you're doing business with my straw man, so I can physically show up here, do something productive, and be compensated for it, right? Otherwise, do not mistake me for this thing I have signed on a piece of paper, which has certain
Mhm.
agreements, right? And that's the attitude I try to keep with an employer, is just that hint of comprehension that I'm going through these formalities. Let's just go.
Yeah. It's important to have that
Yeah.
knowledge, yeah, to self-empower. Yeah. Yeah, you wanted to talk about grid work too.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I think you didn't have a chance to expand as much as I would have been interested in, just because, like, I'm trying to get more traveling acumen under my belt, and I'm inspired to go to places of power and do energy work in those places from time to time, whether for myself or for the collective.
yeah, it's really incredible gift to be able to do that. I know now it's more challenging than ever post all that drama that we were just talking about, because the cost of everything has gone up, and it's harder for people to get out. But yeah, there's amazing places everywhere. Even maybe in a local vicinity of where you are, you might be able to drive somewhere and find a really high energy point. And I guess like the body having the acupuncture points, you know, and the meridians, so does the earth. So there's key, you know, ley lines or meridian points in different areas. And yeah, we know that a lot of these points have been, you could say, yeah, hijacked in a sense, or you know, highways can be built on them, military bases, yeah, obelisks, all sorts of things to negate the energy or harvest it in a certain way, or yeah, transmute it. But yeah, there's still some incredible ancient sites around. Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've gone to a fair few different places, from, you know, like Uluru here in Australia, which is a really powerful place, to, yeah, lots of different sacred sites in India and Nepal, and in Southeast Asia. Some parts of Europe that I found were quite interesting as well. And then, yeah, Egypt or Kemet, that was, yeah, probably the most incredible. Although the energy was very ancient, and yeah, it was kind of looking into the past when you go there. Like you could feel what was there, and it's still there in a sense, but it's not active like it was. But I think that's the important part, going back to these places. Yeah, I was watching a video last night that I saw you were commenting on, Indigo Angel's video about the Hunger Game Olympics, and she was talking about the grid work and everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Going to certain sites, you know, whether it is Nazi Germany areas and stuff like that, where a lot of atrocities have happened, and harmonizing that, putting good energy back into that area, which is very interesting. I definitely felt that with Saqqara in Egypt, like it needed that yeah, like higher frequency energy, like the potential for that was still there, but something quite intense has happened in that space as well. So yeah, a very long time ago, in sense of, you know, wormholes and all that kind of thing. Yeah, that was a very bizarre place. It's probably one of the most bizarre places I've been. That and Varanasi in India, which is where they burn the bodies. For 10,000 years, they've been burning bodies and putting them into the Ganges River, as a sacred kind of ritual. So yeah, there's very thin veil there between life and death. It's very quite spooky, eerie place, but yeah, very, very interesting energetically.
Is that upriver or down? Like, how many people are in the stream of
Further
the
down,
cremation?
yeah. So that I've been to where the Ganges starts, which is Rishikesh, around that area. It comes off the Himalayas and it comes down into the plains, and that's where Rishikesh is. So there, the river is blue, turquoise blue. It has all these rapids and white sand, and it's quite clean. I swam in there every day for months, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
There are giant fish in there and all sorts of things that I learned about later, but I was fine. But yeah, I mean, like catfish that are bigger than me and stuff like that with big teeth, and yeah. But anyway, I was all good. I swam in there every day. I had a wonderful experience. But yeah, when you get down to Varanasi, it's a lot further down the river. A lot of pollutants have come through, you know, a lot of factories. India, with their environmental standards with pollutants, isn't very good, unfortunately. You see some pretty hectic stuff, like toxic waste going into rivers, and yeah, radiation being dumped on the side of the road, and yeah, full on stuff. It's very sad. But there is a certain bacteria that's in the Ganges River that's not in any other river in the world, that actually eats bad bacteria. So that's, I think, why it's got this sacred reputation, because there's actual physical bacteria in there that will eat E. coli and all these other horrible things and heal the body. So yeah, it is actually healing water. Yeah, very powerful.
I can certainly get behind that, like, you know, and it's I do know that they got a lot of those practices on the river that I've seen some of it, just like, as people are cleaning it, people are doing rituals, people are relieving themselves in it. There's a lot of places where it just seems like it's just been, you know, dumped on by their own people, you know.
Yeah. And there's these pink dolphins that live in there, these blind river dolphins that are swimming around, and people are dumping the city's sewage is going in there. People are washing their clothes. People are doing their holy rituals, their puja. all these things are happening, and there's still these dolphins swimming around. I saw one while I was there, which was pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen like at least a picture of those on the internet. They're weird looking.
Yeah, they're weird, like the Amazon ones. Yeah, the Amazon River's got those too. Yeah, different
Mm,
variety.
mm.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of sacred sites out there, and I guess yeah, if you get the opportunity to go there, it's about coming into your center while you're in that space and harmonizing with the Earth's grids. Yeah, doing some type of meditation or energy work while you're there is really really integral. Being able to stay there for a few days if possible, going out away from the town or the city, and being somewhere in nature. In nature, yeah, I think that's all integral in terms of grid work.
Mm, mm, mm.
Even ritual if that's what you're into. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the feeling the this power that comes from these places
Mm.
is being someone who has just been like in just a healthy like kind of regular spiritual practice. Is that typically like enough for it? Do you have to be is there do you have to fine tune your sensitivities to really um to do grid working, or can you very naturally kind of feel the the energy? Like if I were to take like a common person who doesn't feel like energies at all, and I didn't tell them that we were walking up to anywhere special, would they feel it, or would they be or do you have to be practiced and opened in your own personal field?
Yeah, it depends on the individual. Some people it comes naturally to, and others, yeah, they might have to do a bit of attunement work to get there, I think. But there's usually something that people can feel. They'll just go, oh, this is a really beautiful, special place. Or yeah, they'll be drawn to it, even if they don't realize it's before that reason, they might be drawn to it. That's something I've noticed with a lot of the sites here in Australia, like for example, Uluru, but also another place that's a very important grid point here is a place called Byron Bay, which has been overcapitalized on and become like a new age mecca place, but kind of like Mount Shasta, it's got that very powerful ley line energy. There's a direct ley line that runs through there to Uluru. Um, and yeah, it's a very magnetic place. It draws a lot of people in of all sorts, of good intention and not so good intention. Um, yeah, it's just a very high energy place. And I find in those areas when you stay there too long, sometimes, like right on a grid point or a ley line, if you're not in balance, it can actually cause disturbance. People can have mental health issues. They can become very ungrounded. So yeah, some of those places I feel like they're better to visit and not live as well. You kind of go there, you get the medicine or the healing that you need from that place, and then you leave because it's an exchange of energy that you're working with the land. Recently, I went to a really amazing mountain we have here in Victoria, Australia, called Mount Buffalo, but it's also known, the indigenous word is Daughter Donga, and it's known to the indigenous as a friendly mountain. And it was this massive, beautiful mountain that's all national park. And as you go up it, getting further to the top, there's all these pyramid-like structures, all these like rock megaliths. And they're apparently natural, but they're so unusual. Like some of them are like perfect pyramids, others are like these stacked rock structure things. And it kind of feels like a interdimensional meeting place or something like that, that uh, ancient times, like different star nations would like converse there or something. There's this very powerful energy there, and
This
it is a
place,
major tourist attraction.
which place is that?
It's called Mount Buffalo. It's here in Victoria, Australia.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, but it's a very sacred place. Like to the indigenous, they call it the Friendly Mountain, because yeah, there was obviously it was a meeting place, and I don't just think it was a meeting place for different tribes that were here, but also for maybe different interdimensionals in a sense, because it's got this very highly charged energy.
yeah.
It's yeah, you feel it, and I think a lot of people go up there and they don't even know why they're going there. They know it's beautiful, but
Yeah.
there's more like an intuitive, unconscious thing that goes on with a lot of people with these places where they'll just feel drawn there. Yeah.
I back in the day, my friend Bruce McDonald, when I was at Revolution Radio, he interviewed he didn't interview. Well, he worked with John Edmonds to write the book on Stardust Ranch. Stardust Ranch also was an intersectional hub. It was an interdimensional portal that was like a gateway station. It was people coming from it was entities coming from all over the place. Greys, people that seemed like they were like medieval knights, like all these odd things that John Edmonds experienced in his time living there. A lot of it was unpleasant stuff, and in recent years before he died, he finally got way more proper shamans who had gotten attention with the growing understanding of both grid works and like what it was to be like a haunted place and all this stuff, and had gotten a lot of it cleared up or whatever. But the Stardust Ranch book is something I would highly recommend, that John and Bruce wrote together, talking about what's going on in there. It's quite the story, and all these interesting interdimensional details that come about.
Rings a bell. Yeah, I feel like I've heard about it before. This is in the States somewhere?
Yes, this is in the Midwest, or Southwest, I think, somewhere like Arizona, New Mexico, something like that, right? It's out there. It's like a ranch. I think the guy had horses. He was like a horse guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll direct you to the book. I think it's on Amazon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, these places are everywhere. I guess it's just tapping in. You can also use dowsing tools if you practice that. You can get those dowsing sticks, the copper ones with
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
kind of work out where the energy lines are. And there's smaller ones and then there's bigger ones, they're everywhere on the earth.
Yep.
And some are more corrupted than others. That's the thing. So, there's these overlays and stuff like that unfortunately are on a lot of the powerful ones. Yeah. So I guess it is important that a lot of us are in those places to kind of reinforce better energy. And if we are doing good work, and in a frequency that's more harmonious, I think it all makes a difference. I feel the more of us doing that. Yeah.
It does. It does. One of my favorite local places to do energy work, and I don't do these things very often, especially because it's still like a 40-minute drive, is I'm not that far from Balanced Rock or Standing Rock or something, which is in North Salem, New York.
Right.
And that rock is one of the oldest dolmens in the American Northeast. Nobody
Wow.
knows who put it there, but it's a giant stone. This thing's famous. They talk about it in like colleges and stuff now. It's this giant stone. It's like the size of like two trucks. It's like tons and tons, and I think it's got like granite in it and stuff. And it's balanced perfectly on three stones below it. There's this huge gap underneath it where you could go and lie down under it, and it's immense. I've meditated under there, and run sage and stuff under it, and just the fact that these three stones are the only thing keeping you from being crushed to death while you're under there, right? And just feeling the immense energy, and my friend had the dowsing rods, and he came in, and right at about the 6 foot mark, right, the rods would move in, and there's water that's running underneath the dolmen, and you can see the water that pops out on the other side, over by the hill. So we could definitely confirm that there is water running under it, both with our eyes as well as with the dolmen, to correlate with it. I mean, with the with the anyway,
The
yeah,
dowsing.
with all
Yeah.
those two elements.
Yeah. Powerful. Yeah. Yeah. That's similar to the Mount Buffalo place. It had structures like that. that they just say, oh, it's just natural, but it's so bizarre. But I know in the United States, you guys have a lot of
Yeah.
strange structures like
It
that. A
took a
lot of
long time. They were saying it was natural too, that like the ice age, and then like this ice melted and it fell and it landed just perfectly on these three, right at 3 points of balance contact. Like no, don't be a liar.
Yeah, we have this point on Central Coast Australia, or on the East Coast. There's a place called Gosford, another place called Carryong, and they found all these hieroglyphs there, and what looks like a pyramid, or a few different
Mm.
pyramid style structures, even going up to another place called Gympie. Yeah, there was these guys, Stephen and Evan Strong, and they did a whole heap of study on these hieroglyphs that were found there. And yeah, they talked to a lot of the indigenous that were local to that area, and they said it had been passed down that the Egyptians came to Australia long, long ago
Mm.
and learnt the hieroglyphs from the people that were here at the time. And that at that time, Australia was quite an advanced civilization in terms of a more high-tech energy, a more bioenergetic technology than what we are aware of right now.
Yeah, this would be when they were connected to Lemuria. We're talking
Yeah,
we're talking about leftovers of
long
Lemuria
time.
being an
Yeah,
influence on the Egyptians.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, that was part of it.
that
But
makes
yeah, another man I met, an Indigenous elder. Once I was sitting down with a whole group of people, and he was there. He was from Arnhem Land, which is right up the top north, remote part of Australia, where there's still a lot of tribes up there that still speak their own language, and they're not really influenced much by the modern world. And he'd come down to where I was and was saying that long, long ago, he's like, I don't know why I need to tell this story, but I'm going to tell you guys this. And he said, long, long time ago, Australia was this advanced place. We had this very advanced technology here, and we we're in contact with all these star nations. And there was all these different things going on in
yeah.
terms of like free energy and all these technologies. And then he said there was a certain race that became fallen, and he said they were like the Draco, the lizard people. He started talking about that
Right.
and how they infiltrated 13 bloodlines and created this massive issue
Sure.
on the earth with all the different bloodlines.
Yeah.
And he said that the reason why the indigenous in Australia went back to more like a hunter-gatherer style thing was to escape that infiltration of what was happening at that time. So they gave up all their technology and all their advanced civilization and went back to having fur and fire and spears, because that was the only way they could keep their autonomy of their genetics. And this guy's telling me this story, and this was years ago. I was back when I'd read stuff like David Icke talking about all that stuff. And I'm
Right.
thinking, have you been on the internet, mate? And he's like, no, I'm illiterate. I can't read and write. I'm oral, I tell stories.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so he hadn't read any of that stuff on the internet or anything like that. He'd come straight from a
Yeah.
tribe and was telling us this
He
story.
was
So
he was
yeah,
which tribe? Which tribe was he?
somewhere up in Arnhem Land. I'm not sure the
Gotcha.
exact one. There's a lot of different
Because
tribes. There's like
it's
over 84 tribes in Australia.
because I know
Yeah,
that I know that it's the Dogon are famous for their lore about knowing about Sirius A, B, and C or something like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
because
There is.
that like they or beings came originally from there that they know of, and that they knew that there were three before we could see three.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they were quite aware of that. And yeah, weren't they like aquatic beings or something like that? Like dolphin beings, who the Dogon were conversing with?
Um,
Pretty sure that's kind of aquatic
Maybe.
style being.
Probably. Well, yeah, because at that point, Dogon, you're getting into the correlation to Dagon, and then you're getting into the
Yeah,
fish cult from there, which then gets associated with uh, the Phoenicians who came from the Sea Peoples Federation, and the Sea Peoples Federation was the leftovers of the mercantile classes of Atlantis.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
The
There's
connection.
your history
Yeah,
lesson, folks. Sea
yeah,
Peoples
yeah.
Federation. That's an interesting one that they've scrubbed from the history books.
What about the Tuatha De Danann? Do you think they're connected to Atlantis as well? That's
That's
interesting
that's
mythology.
very
And
that's very compelling. I think that that Thomas Sheridan and Neil MacDonald, I think, is his colleague in the archaeology anthropology department over there in the Fortean studies. um, they did that documentary, and I didn't read the book on their little research into the situation, but I think that they made a very compelling compelling argument. There's such interesting things, and I think getting the clarity on the Tuatha De Danann is both a combination of doing that proper research like Sheridan and McDonald did, combined with getting a real proper grasp on the confusion that is coming from those speaking about the tribes being
Tribe of Dan and all this.
yeah, exactly, because we need to clean all of that, up and get that properly straightened out in a way that doesn't make it sound like we're trying to resurrect Mean Mr. Mustache.
Yeah. Because there's a weird connection with the Basque and the Berbers and the
Right.
Celts and the RH negative thing, and
Right.
that connection with, that whole side of, Great Britain and, Northern Africa and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That maybe there was something there, like, in terms of Atlantis or something, where all those people have even language similarities. In terms of like how something's happened there where it's almost like they all got displaced and had to come to those islands from somewhere else at some stage. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also not entirely opposed to the idea in alchemy on a tribal level of the idea of spontaneous generation, where
Yeah.
group of people effectively they almost, they alchemically manifest because the conditions are right.
I've heard about
And although I think it's a little bit different for people, but I do think it can happen, right? And I only think that it's different for people because unlike the animals that are associated with spontaneous generation, humans, we've got that correspondence in our reflection to the gods that makes us distinctly different than being an animal, as beings of, I don't know, our own agency. Those, all those things that distinguish us from being, quote, animals, right? So it's not just let's just find the Carpathian forests, and here's bears, and here's birds, and there's white man. Right? I'm not saying it's like that at all, but there's something else to it. I feel like there's just something else to it, because I think it's kind of hinted in the Bach saga, because the way Frey and Freyr, the Raj and whatnot, the way they originally manifest, it's a funky, almost pseudo evolution story that kind of ascribes to the aquatic ape theory in a way, and it's very spontaneous generation like.
Yeah. Evolved from a goat and an ape. And the whole cataclysm story coming in there again that created, the whole thing with the Great North freezing over, hell freezing over.
Right.
And then we've got the whole distortion of the concept of hell because of, Abrahamic religion and making hell out like it's this terrible place, when in the Bok saga originally it was actually a paradise, a tropical, lush place where people lived in a lot of harmony and balance, until some kind of pole shift or cataclysmic event occurred that forced people from the north down into other parts of the world, more into the equator and stuff like that.
It's the they've been distorting all the underworlds that way, right? Like Christian hell, it sounds like elements of Norse underworld places, like a little bit of Muspelheim, a little bit of Svartalfheim, and a little bit of Helheim, and you've got Hades in the Greek mythos, borrowing a little bit from there, the Celtic underworld of the three worlds, the lower world, all of these different places, and all of them are highly misunderstood in the sense of being places for for healing, right? And that we used those orientations because when you died, you're the salts, getting back to the alchemy, the salts of your body break down and go back to the earth. You return to ash, return to dust, yada yada yada. That's your salts and your oils are separating, and your oils rise and they go into the ethers, and then your salts they lose their binding without the oil. It falls apart and it returns to the earth, right?
Yeah.
And so the earth, everything that's under the ground is the underground. That's the underworld. That's Sheol. That's hell. That's X, Y, and Z, right? And then, the only reason why you were thought of as being in the underworld when you died is if people that knew you in life knew that you died perhaps a troubled person, right? And you're working out your troubles on the other side because you didn't work it out this time, and then you'll be back in reincarnation, and you're going to reincarnate anyway. It's just that we understood like where you were going to go in between, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because of your state. You died, you went to Valhalla. You didn't actually stay there to have an eternal football game with Odin, right? That's what I look at Valhalla when you get the Viking interpretation of it. It's like, wow, NFL forever? Woo! And it's just,
Feasting and fighting. Yeah, yeah.
guys are so immature.
But only the victorious warriors that died in battle went to Valhalla, not the everybody else went to hell.
Like I'm saying, I think that you go to Valhalla when you die to go to Valhalla, and then you spend some time in Valhalla because of how you died, and then eventually you get back on the horse, right?
So what's your thoughts about the whole reincarnation soul trap thing, that we're kind of in this infinity loop, and there's this amnesia every time we come in, and we forget everything we did before, and we have to start from scratch again. Sometimes we have some things inherently still in our soul memory, but for most people they're completely in amnesia. They don't remember anything from their previous incarnations.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And then the fact mortality, we're only living now for 80, 90 years if we're lucky, 100 years.
Right.
And then in all the ancient tales all across the world, there's stories of people living to 1,000 years old. So I feel like something's happened as well in terms of
the reincarnation trap. I'm still working on how all that is, the concepts of the forgetting or the whatever, and because you want to be able to deal with this in a way that's in accordance with the higher force within natural law, and as we look at these stories that promise us that we used to live for like a millennia, right? Like those stories are saying we lived for a millennia, but perhaps we also never physically died or whatever. But then we also, because we didn't physically die or we lived a millennia, we had a different relationship with the production process, right? Because you wouldn't have like 10 million kids or something like Adam and Eve or something had, right? Because you live forever and you don't necessarily need that many people in the world. But we're not talking about an Adam and Eve thing. Like the world didn't start with two human beings. It started with all sorts of tribes, emerging all over the place. Is largely how I think that it happened. With a certain central focus from the north, but to transcend the race thing, it was the paradise time, and so there was no such thing as white man because we were all copper, because we were all living in tropical weather, no matter where you were, right? Because there was no till to the earth, right? So the epigenetics would have been more homogenous for the entire human race across the globe. We would have been used to the same environments and such. But the reincarnation situation, it's like I don't know how much I agree with, because I haven't been tuned into much of it anymore, because it's not, I don't think the frequency's all there for me anymore. But Farsight Institute, they did the reincarnation trap a remote viewing session, very long session, like 3 hours or something, and the people that they had, like the 3 or 4 members of their team that remote viewed several random persons from different periods in history who died and went through the death and process, and like they weren't looking for reincarnation. They called it reincarnation after the video came, but just to see what happened when after you died, right? And um and so that one goes through correspondences I've heard from other testimonies about people that had near death experiences and kind of came across, the entities that are kind of like the death management managers, right? The regulators of the death bureaucracy in the ethers.
Yeah.
And in theirs, they had 3 shadowy figures that seemed to be the top of whatever this etheric bureaucracy that was throwing people back in, and there would be like this. They'd be in this. They'd be kind of like in the other world, not having gone into the underworld yet, and then I don't know. They meet some entity to lead them, and then there's like this electrical storm in the other world, and that electrical storm then passes over you, and that does the brain wipe as your soul is then taken in to be refitted for for inception in the reincarnation process for when you come back. But they didn't, like, my problem with the Far Side is that sometimes I'm watching what their researchers are putting out in presentation, and then the interpretation later on in the video when they have the project lead, whether it's Courtney or Aziz. It's usually Aziz nowadays, it seems. His I guess it's his adopted son, or so. I think he's an adopted son, but anyway, talented remote viewer either way. Like their interpretation is they left out how one of the remote viewing sessions, you could clearly see that he did not get brain wiped, and he had a very, what I would call, the kind of death that would put you in Valhalla. Like he died in some battle. This was like some modern battle. Like he had like a gun and stuff, right?
Okay.
And so like he died, and he died in a like he was doing the right thing in the war or something like that. Like his heart was in the right place, like he had saved some lives or something like that, and he's bleeding out or whatever, right? This kind of situation, and I guess he was, I don't know. He dies, and then he just goes, and he kind of like, he leaves. He just kind of walks about, and like he doesn't go, he sees that there's the many souls that died in this place, and they're all kind of like walking in a certain direction. He doesn't go, and he doesn't go walk like the rest of those souls do, right? And so all this is in that Farsight Institute thing, right?
Well,
So they completely ignore that. Well, hold on, you didn't remote view this guy getting a storm and getting his soul like grabbed by an entity after being like wiped and whatever, right? Like for one of the remote viewers, she's obviously like an empath and a remote viewer. I forget her name, but she's the one that gets like the really intense emotional connections and stuff. Like she almost breaks down and cries like while in the middle of doing the remote viewing, because she's remote viewing one of these people that gets that harsh fucking treatment of having the mind wipe, right?
right.
And it was very upsetting for her. She was fine, but she's going through the emotions of it.
So it comes back to not fragmenting
Yeah,
yourself when you die, like keeping a lucidity. I think a lot of shamanic cultures speak about that too, that the more you can be consciously together in yourself and not fragment, the more soul autonomy you can actually have, and maybe even come back in more with the kind of Eastern idea of, the Bodhisattva or something like this
right.
as a choice, where we're coming in because we want to shift this reality field, and we've got that conscious awareness of that. We're not coming in with complete amnesia, with this nihilistic point of view, or
Yeah,
this programming of some sort of religion or idea. We're coming in with that knowledge of what's going on the energetic level, what's been going on for aeons, and our soul's role in that process in terms of the whole energetic paradox that we need to harmonize and equalize through being here in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, precisely. So like, that I was a little disappointed that they didn't explore that more so, right? To talk about like, so this, because that I think that was the only one amongst the examples where the electrical storm didn't
Right.
happen, right? So like those are some of my weird issues when it comes to getting what we get from Farsight, but they're also very, very, they're also kind of like they're doing big projects too. So, I think it's still good to cite them, use your own discernment. When I worked at Revolution Radio, I think I actually interviewed Courtney. Like Courtney knows who I am. I interviewed him like 6 times or something, talking about various like I talked, I think, about his Atlantis reading. I think we talked about the 9/11 reading. Like I had him on for quite a few of these things.
Right.
Yeah.
So much fear around death. People fear it so much, and maybe that creates a lot of the fragmentation that people experience when they die. Not to mention, a lot of people go out medicated and stuff like that. But yeah, if there's this fear of the unknown, that maybe that's opening you up to that type of electrical storm, But if you're going courageous,
Yeah.
maybe that doesn't happen. Yeah. We have a
Yeah.
choice.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. Like
Still
I
speculative.
don't. Yeah, I don't think that it has to be like. Granted, there's so many people that they incarnate in this world, and with the memory wipe, and their lives are also still like great going through the enrichment, because like you can go like you don't have too many proper complaints, but you happen to be somebody who loves like to go through all this kind of stuff. You're not going to be, you're going to be a little upset on a soul level because it's a big deal, right? But it's not as personal feeling. Like I don't feel like personally slighted that some entity like wiped my mind, right? As much as I'm thinking to myself, well, what if I was so awesome? Like what if I was a musician in a past life and I couldn't take any of that with me? I had to really work extra hard for it, right? Because I'm working extra hard for it. So either I never was a musician, or I was a musician, I've forgotten how to be a musician, right? Like I could be angry and all gnarly about that, and if that is a truth, then I'm fighting against that, because I think that's part of problems. But also, I'm not special, and everybody else has got to go through things the proper way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's part of living, isn't it? Yeah, we have to meet those challenges and forge ahead. Yeah, with perseverance. If it all just came easily, then we wouldn't do the work, would we? So yeah,
Right,
there's
right,
there's
right.
a positive side to all of it. Yeah, of course. Yeah. But yeah, I felt like I came in quite aware of a lot of things. Like I don't remember all my previous lives, but I did have some remnants and memories, and throughout this life, I've had things triggered in terms of, I guess, the notion of soul family and being connected to certain people for different lifetimes. And yeah, I've had a lot of that where there's been a mutual recognition. Many different people in all different parts of the world I've met, and they've remembered me and I've remembered them. And there's been this, amazing recognition of the soul and of maybe things we've experienced before, which is pretty cool to have that memory triggered. And also, going to certain places and just having this profound kind of palpable feeling that I've been here. I feel this place so much. This isn't the first time I've been to this place, just in a different life, different body. But yeah, there's definitely a recognition. Yeah. So yeah, that can be awakened as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's part of why it's just thinking along the lines of, it's just like, you don't want to throw somebody like something that's easy, but you also don't, I don't think you want to throw somebody anything that's abusive either, right? We're dealing, we got people that are bringing children into this world, as they should, and it's like we're all dealing with whatever our personal you know shortcomings are going to be as as a person who then also is being like a parent. We don't necessarily know the best way to set things up for our children, right? So, we hope that we're setting up a world that is showing families such a awesome way to protect their next generation. Like we're sitting there trying to tell people, here, do all this for your child instead of taking 50 vaccines that your doctor recommends that they take, right? This, that, and the other thing, to try to show people like this, you're bringing somebody from our whole family back into this world. And I got no possession over your family at all, whether this incarnation is a soul that I've known in my journey or not. But we're all working together here. We all have a personal responsibility towards each other on certain important levels. And so thus, I encourage you to put these practices to use for your children, because that's a person who is getting back on this roller coaster. And we've developed since then, and to give the next generation new tools. People like you, people like me, are here to help in certain ways, right? Like every parent needs to get their kids' astrology chart off the bat, get the right astrologer to give the reading. And you've got a 1-year-old and you can function straight up with their natal chart, like right then and fresh, and know what all sorts of those primordial habits of the baby are, and to show all that love and support while it's in its most absolute pure and raw form, and going through, and it all looks so beautiful in my head. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah, it's very important. Get the children off the screens, because now this whole generation that are at the moment here that are little, like a lot of the parents see screens as a great babysitter, which I can understand because it's not easy being a parent. But at the same time, in terms of the development of the brain, the neuroplasticity and all that, it's all being affected. Like people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates didn't give their children smart technology until their brains were developed, until they're about 17 or 18, and the brain's like at a certain point, because it inhibits development. So, the best things we can do is, take the kids outside, teach them about local plants in the area, what different birds are that are around, or, how to identify things, how to garden, how to, build things with their hands, how to fix things, practical, how to cook, all that stuff that used to just easy for people before all this technological.
And you can't just take the device away. You have to give the kid a mindset that finds a certain there's going to be something that can satiate in the child, but you got to make sure that they are not having, like I let in my childhood. So I'm talking from my experience, why I'm in my why I'm where I'm at, right? Of really giving too much of my time to nothing, right? Too much enjoyment of it. And I'm like, we're talking the 90s. I'm not talking about playing a game on my phone. I'm talking about CRT television, PlayStation 1 or whatever, and just hours of just like I'm playing an RPG and just I want to beat this game in 40 hours, right? And so I do my basic responsibilities and whatever, because I didn't see, I was all the bad habits were setting in of not having a good work ethic, and it's
procrastination.
It's so it's so far behind, so far from who I was right now that I even have a hard time even just talking about it in reflection, right? Because it's just like there's so little to say at this point, other than the point that I'm making, that you can't just take the device away from the kid. You have to create superior interest in the real world for the child. You have to have that within you. Half the time, that little child really just wants to do something with mom and dad. You know,
Yeah.
a boy wants to do things in emulation of father, or wants father to kind of like show them all these things, and that they could maybe help with uh, towards things that they're interested in.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. Reading to kids is
and
great.
and
Yeah.
and I wish there was the right stimulation in my life. I wish I didn't get totally like into the fantasy world to such a detrimental level of my time.
Yeah.
Right.
To the point of like escapism and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In some ways it was helpful because of how I'm able to do things with the mythos, because of how much I've learned from picking up things that were true in the mythoses of my entertainments,
There's a
like,
crossover, of course.
because if
Yeah.
somebody told you the truth in a cartoon, like how many conspiracy theorists talk about the G.I. Joe movie because you've got inner Earth bug and reptilian people in a conspiracy with terrorists to take over the world. It's just like, David Icke wrote this fucking movie, right? It's just like you learned something, right?
It's all in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's all.
yeah. I didn't need to
Yeah.
watch the
I
movie
was.
10
Yeah.
fucking times though.
I wasn't allowed to have any video games. And my mum, when we were small, she used to read us things like Lord of the Rings and
Mm,
The Hobbit, and yeah, like all the greats, yeah, all the old Charles Dickens books and all that kind of stuff. That's
yeah,
kind of what I grew up with. So I was very lucky. It was very literary,
yeah,
and she was just fortunate to have that time to sit down and read to us, and then that developed a love of books, and I was able to access those books. And a lot of the books she read to me, I then went and read myself later on as I got older, because there was that story I had a affinity with, and yeah, it had its own mythos. Like I had a love for all the different mythology, especially the Greek mythology. I find that so colorful and interesting, and the Celtic mythology, the Norse, all of that. So yeah, that's all very helpful. Like, yeah, sparking that interest, and getting the attention span to be a bit more refined, because yeah, currently people's attention spans are very short. So yeah, we've got to do
yeah.
what we can to really um,
Right, right, right.
retrain the brain.
Yeah,
Mm.
you kind of have to create the 5 second clip to lead them to the 15 second clip to the 1 minute clip, and then by 1 minute you might be able to get them to a 15 minute clip. Maybe
I feel like,
we
yeah,
have to decompress them in increments.
exactly. Yeah, good training,
So
retrain.
so let me think here. Is there anything else that I cannot think of that you want to cover? Because I want to give you a chance to speak your piece on anything else, because we've been doing about 2 hours, so I can go a little bit longer. I just want to make sure that you got out everything you can, because I don't know if I've got much more to talk with you tonight.
Oh, that's good. I'm quite happy. Yeah, I've got to go do some things today.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's midday here. So, in
Excellent.
different time
Excellent.
zone, of course. But yeah, yeah,
Do
yeah, I
you
can't think of anything else. I think we've been on some good tangents. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Do you do you want to make a, promote here of your channel or anything to that effect, or go through the
Yeah, my friend and I we've worked on this book. It's pretty much just nearly ready. I think he's just rereading it to make sure there's no spelling mistakes. A bit of editing going on. So yeah, I've illustrated it, and he's written most of it. I've written tiny bits of it. So that's coming out very soon. I can give you a link to that. Yeah, it's going to be quite a quirky read. It's quite fast paced. It's a short story. It's not hugely long. I don't know how many chapters there are, maybe 30 or something like that, 33 or something. But yeah, so that book's coming soon. I've also got an art page with all my hand drawn art and stuff like that. So I sell prints. If anyone's interested, can send you a print.
Mhm.
Yeah, other than that, if you want to get a hold of me, I'll give you my email as well, just in the
Yep.
comments.
Yep.
Yeah.
You didn't draw the big banner behind you, did you?
No, I wish. No, I just ordered this on the internet because it's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, great colors. It's very psychedelic. It might actually even be computer generated, I think.
Hmm.
I don't think it's a handmade one, but it's very cool. I just love the colors. It's beautiful.
Oh, it looks
Yeah.
great. Looks great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a well kind of
All
thing.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you.
So I think with that, we're gonna wrap it up, everybody. I've been here. This has been my guest today on my channel, Tala Linden. And you stay tuned. I'm gonna have some more surprises coming up for everybody around the corner. Peace out.
Yeah. Thanks. Cheers.